Think about your 5 best friends in the world. Who are they? Who understands you most? Now think about the love of your life. Think about your partner, if you have one or you want one. Partners, who's counting? If it's not going so well, think about the person you'd like to be with. Now think about where you live. Think about the names of some neighbours that live on your street. Think about 1 or 2 of the people who are near to where you live. And finally, think about work. Think about your 5 closest colleagues at work. If you have a bad day, who do you confide in? Who do you rely on? Who do you trust? Hopefully, in your head right now, you have your 5 closest friends in the world, your lover or lovers or future lover, your neighbours, and your 5 closest colleagues. Think about those names. And draw a circle around those names. That is your in-group. How diverse is it? Hold that thought. 10 years ago, I was responsible for diversity and inclusion for the London 2012 Olympic and Paralympic Games. We had to recruit 200,000 people. And if we just left it to the market, those 200,000 people would probably have looked and sounded a little bit like me. We would have replicated our own in-group. But we wanted London to be different. We wanted the London Games to represent London, to feel like London, to look like London. And one of the things we did differently was to move the location of the interview room from the top floor of a skyscraper in the financial district to a single-story community centre in a poorer neighbourhood. Rather than expecting the candidates to come to us, we went to them. Rather than expecting candidates to adapt to us, we tried to adapt to them. You see, diversity is simply the mix of people. It could be visible characteristics, like gender or race or appearance. It could be invisible characteristics, like thinking style, sexual orientation, disability. But as a general rule, the more diversity we have, the more possibilities exist, the more potential we have for creativity and innovation. And conversely, a lack of diversity can be problematic. Take driverless cars, for example. A recent Georgia Tech study showed that the AI technology and the camera-based sensors on driverless cars have a harder time seeing black skin compared with white skin. And so these driverless cars have a tendency to hit black people more than white people. The design team was largely white. Talking of cars, did you know that in a car crash, all things being equal, a woman is 17% more likely to die and 47% more likely to be seriously injured? A Stanford University team found that the designers, largely male, used male bodies as the crash test dummy norm. And of course, women's bodies are different. Or heaven forbid you have a heart attack. The Centre for Cardiovascular Research has found that the symptoms, and therefore the prescription for men and women, are significantly different. Yet we've only just discovered this because historically drugs were treated on male patients. Can you see how our in-groups might matter? Now, they matter personally, of course they do, because hopefully in your head right now you still have a vague recollection of those friends and neighbours, your lover or lovers, and colleagues. And that in-group is very important to us as human beings personally, because goodness knows we all need love and security and comfort. But professionally, that comfort can be seductive. That comfort can be dangerous, actually, because that in-group also acts as an unconscious frame of reference for how we see and judge other people. It acts as our unconscious frame of reference, our benchmark, our norm, for how we perceive things like intelligence or trustworthiness. And these perceptions could be completely invalid based on invalid criteria. So you see, who's in our in-group matters. Now, I'd like to think that my in-group is pretty diverse. And of course, diversity could be those physical characteristics that we see, like gender and race. It could also be those invisible characteristics, or it could be things like political persuasion, or preference for alcohol, or voting intention. But whilst I think I'm pretty diverse, actually, a cursory analysis of my in-group reveals that there is a good proportion of bald, white, middle-aged guys who drink a little bit, have an appalling sense of humour, and a quite unrealistic perception of their own attractiveness. For example. So you see, this isn't good or bad, or right or wrong. It just is. It's a natural and normal part of being a human, that we naturally gravitate towards people like us. In our personal lives, that's fine, because we need that comfort. In our professional lives, that might be the exact opposite of what we need. So when it comes to who you should hire, who you should fire, who you should promote, the first thing I'd like to think about is that in-group that's in your head. Because that awareness, that self-awareness of who's in our in-group and who's not, is critical if we are to make merit-based decisions about hiring, firing, and promotion. And with that awareness comes the second step. The second step is simply to change our behaviours, to act differently. Now, the bad news is that all the diversity training in the world won't necessarily help. It'll be insufficient. But what will is socializing and mixing with people who are as different from you as you can handle. Now, you could do that consciously. You could reflect on your in-group and think, crikey, they really are all like me. Or it could be simply putting yourself in the path of serendipity and being open to the possibility of meeting different people. That's what happened to me. I went to graduate school in the United States, and at induction, I was sat next to Dawn, Doreen, and Ashani, 3 black women. I didn't consciously sit there, but they were chatty, and they were very tolerant of my ignorance, and we got talking, and we became friends. They dragged me out to countless bars. I disliked their music profoundly, I still do, but we became really good friends. I recall, actually, when I went to Ashani's wedding, that I was the only white guy there. And I recall vividly the photograph of the wedding party on the beach, because it's pretty easy to spot me. But of course, whilst that was a relatively rare experience for me, that is, of course, the daily lived experience for many people. And now, through serendipity, through conscious and unconscious things, I have an in-group which has those black women, those 3 wonderful friends of mine, alongside the white guys too. So this matters. It matters because our world is becoming quite polarized. But actually, we have it within ourselves to decide who we mix and socialize with. Have you ever felt lonely or left out, excluded or passed over? Were you ever last to be picked for games lessons or PE at school? Ever passed over for promotion? And then did somebody include you? You could be that somebody to somebody else. Because by definition, if you are enlarging your in-group, then someone else is doing likewise. Enlarging your in-group and changing that unconscious norm, that reference point, will help you personally and professionally. It will help somebody else. It will help all of us. We know, for example, that scientific research is more accurate when diversity is considered. We know that driverless cars will be safer when diversity was considered. We know that women would have a better survival rate in car accidents if diversity was considered. So, when it comes to hiring people, before you hire anybody, reflect on your in-group. At London 2012, had we not done that, we would have ended up with people like me. But by reversing the power dynamic between candidate and interviewer, by simply moving the location of the interview room, we created 200,000 wonderfully diverse, creative people. Ensure that you have diverse long lists. Make sure you have mixed interview panels and ask the same consistent questions to all of the candidates. Simple things that will make a big difference. Before you fire anybody, reflect again on your in-group. Are you using valid criteria? Comfort is fine in your personal life. It's perhaps rather invalid when it comes to dismissing people. I meet so many organizations that spend so much time and effort on diversity recruitment efforts when those people tend to be the first to be the victims of any redundancy program in those same organizations. We need to ensure that we don't dismiss those who don't shout loudest. And before you promote anybody, again, reflect on your in-group, but also reflect on some basic things that will help us make more valid decisions. We know, for example, that men tend to put themselves forward for promotion when they can fulfill 50% of the job criteria, whereas women tend to hold back till they can fulfill 90% of the job criteria. So we need to challenge bravado wherever it persists and exists. So, why does this matter? Well, our world is becoming more polarized, and our organizations could do better. In a political void, in a social void, work is actually a wonderful vehicle for creating inclusion and togetherness. It actually allows us to create better decisions. Work is the vehicle to allow us to come together to improve things for all of us. If you think that making a difference yourself isn't going to be enough, think again. Culture is what you do, and you all do hire, fire, and promote people. If you think that basically this isn't enough, or your impact won't be enough, remember what Anita Roddick said. She said that if you think you're too small to make an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room. Thank you.